church work, church planting, they're very spiritual in nature. And as a result, it's a spiritual leadership that helps really create the foundation but establish a new church as well. Let's talk a little bit about spiritual leadership, what that means, how to prepare yourself, and recognizing even the battles that exist in the spiritual realm. So when we talk about spiritual leadership, there's kind of 5 components. One is there's submission. In other words, Pastor, I'm going to encourage you to have somebody in your life that you just submit to, their spiritual authority. Maybe it's a coach. I would encourage every pastor, you need to have a pastor, someone that you can go to and just talk openly and freely, that you know that they care about you, will speak the truth to you, will pray with you when you need to be prayed with, and just be an encourager to you. And so who is that in your life that you're willingly submitting to in order to continue to grow as a personal leader and as a pastor? The second part of spiritual leadership is integrity. Our integrity is what takes us forward. And when it comes to integrity as a pastor, as a church planter, let me encourage you, it comes down to simply this. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. You're going to get pushed from all different types of people and all kinds of different experiences. People are going to come from existing churches and they're going to have an expectation that your church is going to be like that church. Be very careful in what promises you make, what you carry through. Early on in the life of your church, you do want to be the type of person that is reliable. And so I would encourage you to even set guidelines for yourself and any peripheral staff people that you bring on. How quickly are you going to respond to emails, texts, phone calls? And then hold yourself to that so that people begin to build trust. I found that it takes almost a year in a new church plant for people to actively trust you. And part of that is it takes a year for them to kind of learn your voice, to learn your ways, and recognize, no, I can trust this person. I want to trust this person in my life. And one of the ways that you can speed that up and build the trust is just be a person of integrity. The third component of spiritual leadership is responsibility, meaning you've got to be responsible to move this thing forward. Nobody else is. There are certain things that you just can't delegate. Things like the mission, the culture of the church that you're looking at creating, and making sure that those things get followed through. The networking, getting the word out. Those things early on are things that only you can do. And so you've got to own the responsibility to that. Multiplication, similar to responsibility. Nobody's going to make you multiply. But again, it comes down to what does it mean to be a missional church? That our goal is to make better and more disciples. And so we need to have a multiplying mentality from day one in the life of our church. And then lastly, there's a resistance that's going to take place. And it comes back to what we talked about with the expansion of God's kingdom as to why we plant churches. That, again, when you're walking out on the front lines and you're putting that flag in the ground and you're declaring this area as being part of God's kingdom, all hell's going to break loose and come after you. And you're going to face both what I would dub internal resistance and external resistance. Internal resistance is that you'll have people close to you, maybe even in the life of your church or churches around you, even family members that are going to push back. They're not going to understand. They're not going to get this. They're not going to be supportive of it. But at the same time, you're going to find external resistance as well taking place as you move forward. So how do we deal with that? How do we grow through that? What are similarities that every church planter faces when it comes to planting a new church and the spiritual battle? Let me kind of walk you through some of those things. And it starts with this kind of question. What do you tend to do when the resistance is just too much? There are moments in life that we all face that are just challenging, where you feel like there's no possible way that I could pick this up. There's no possible way that I could move this. The resistance is just too much. And we all have kind of our default mechanisms as to how we respond. Do you tend to retreat? Do you tend to recluse? Do you tend to go the opposite way and get overly emotional? What is your kind of natural default? And the more that you can begin to understand yourself, you'll understand both your strengths as a leader, but even the dark side of your own leadership. I love just this as a ground framework, a grid to be able to walk you through and help you process the spiritual battles that you're going to face. We're all very familiar with this, but let me just kind of walk us through this and remind us. This is Matthew 28:18-20. It says, "And Jesus came and said to them, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples to all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. A couple of things I just want to point out to us in that. Number one, who has all authority? Jesus does. All authority, not only here on earth, but in the heavenly realm, is his. And so what we need to come to grips with and understand is that there's nothing that's going to happen that's outside of his authority. And so if there's challenges that we're walking through, it's first had to come across his plate before it's even allowed to walk into our lives. And so what we need to understand in this is that the one who has all authority in heaven and earth, he's actually commissioned us. He called us we have a job, and he's given us a job description of what we're supposed to be about as his followers, as his disciples. We're to go and make more disciples, baptizing them, teaching them about who he is, what he's done, and all the things that he's teaching them as well. And so, again, what a great opportunity that God has included us in his work, that he has a place for us in that process. And I love that. It's something that we can't take lightly because, again, the one who has all authority in heaven and earth has commissioned us to go and do this. And I love how he finishes this. He says, I'm going to be with you. So not only is the one who has all authority in heaven and on earth given us a job, a mandate that we're to carry out, he says, you're not going to be sent out there alone. I'm with you. No matter how hard it is, no matter how challenging it is, no matter how dark it is, I'm with you. And I want that to resonate deep down in your soul as a pastor, as a planter, as a church leader, that there are certain things that God is going to call you to do, and church planting may be one of those things, that it's just tough. And you're going to walk through seasons that are difficult and they're challenging. But in the midst of that, recognize God is there, God is in it, and he hasn't forgotten you. And sometimes that's the one piece that allows us to kind of keep moving forward. Now, what I've recognized is every church planter, I'd even say every pastor, at some point in their ministry time will face three major crises. And those three major crises are this. You're going to go through a personal crisis, you're going to face a leadership crisis, and you're going to face a financial crisis. I kind of put it this way with new church planters. When you face all three of those things, hey, welcome to the club. You're now officially a church planter. These aren't oftentimes talked about, but I like to bring it to light because it's helpful to know, like, when I'm going through these challenges, this is normal. And these things are completely normal. And so it's helpful for us sometimes to just normalize the challenges that we're going through. Some of you may face one year it's a personal crisis, next year it's a leadership crisis, and so on. I know even for my life, both times I walked through all three of these in the same season. It started off, I had some major knee issues. I collapsed on a bowling alley with my staff, and our church was almost 2 years old. I ended up having to go in for surgery. They said it'd be a quick recovery, 6 weeks. Go into the surgery. The surgeon comes out and looks at my wife and says, I have no idea what your husband's done to his knee. I can't do anything. Out of that, I became a national case study. Had multiple surgeries. One of those surgeries actually kept me in bed for 12 weeks, bedridden. I was hooked up to a passive motion machine that moved my leg kind of back and forth for 12 hours a day. And our church plant was only 2.5 years old. Not only am I physically unable to get up and move, the financial hit was significant to us as well. And not only was it hitting us personally, but that was the first season in our church where our church was walking through financial challenges as well. And then on top it all off, I had an elder that kind of went sideways and began to rattle the cages and trying to kind of push me out the whole time while I'm bedridden. I'm so thankful that the other elder saw it for what it was and confronted the bad behavior, and eventually that guy and his family ended up leaving. But that was a very, very challenging and dark season of our lives. And fast forward through the next year, I'm in recovery. I'm trying to recover. I've got to wear a brace for a year. We get to the 1 year mark following that major surgery and recognize that the surgery didn't work the way it was supposed to. And now we're trying to figure out what. I end up getting diagnosed with a weird kind of disease called SPONK, which stands for spontaneous osteonecrosis of knee, where the bone in my knee joint was actually dying. And if body couldn't heal itself, then there was a high likelihood that I would actually have my left leg amputated. This is all in the church planting realm. And there's layer on layer on layer of more stuff. And here's what I want you to understand. You are going to go through a personal leadership and financial crisis. Normalize it. But at the same time, allow God to speak through those circumstances to mold you as being the leader that he's called you to be. The one passage to me that spoke to me dearly through this season of my life was 2 Corinthians chapter 1, that talks about that in the midst of our trials, in the midst of our tribulation, in the midst of our pain, the God of all comfort walks with us, so that some point we can use our story, we can use our pain to encourage others in their journey as well. And I began to realize that pain is actually a gift in our lives. I lived with chronic pain for almost a decade. And in that season, I've come to recognize that pain in and of itself is actually a gift, because it's in our pain, it's in our trials that we get to experience God's comfort. The only way, in other words, to experience the comfort of God is to experience pain. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, I want to know that part of God. I want to experience his comfort in my life. I want to know that side of his heart. But there's only one way to get there, and that's through seasons of pain. And so don't retreat. Don't live in fear. Lean into it. Trust the fact that the one who has all power, has all authority, is there even in the darkest moments and the most challenging seasons of your life. And what I've come to realize, it's not about if you will hit the wall. You're going to hit the wall, as much as what are you actually going to do when you get there? Well, my encouragement is this. A major lesson that every church planter is going to learn is that they can't go around, you can't go under, and you can't go over the walls that are placed in front of you. We all have to learn to walk through those walls with Jesus. And I want you to know you're not alone. This is one of the reasons why I encourage all planters to have a tribe, have a network, have a group of people that you're connected with, that are encouraging and walking with you, that you know will pray with you. I don't know if I would have made it if it wasn't for my tribe of guys in and around my city that loved us, cared for us, prayed for us, and supported our family through these challenges. Yes, you're going to go through some challenging seasons. You're not alone. I'm here. There's others here for you. I'd love nothing more than to pray with you in those seasons of ministry as well. Love you. Press on. Continue to trust that God is there with you, and he's carrying you on to see the mission fulfilled.